Majority are marginalized women and girls. They are sexually exploited at a young age, so it starts really young. In fact, the youngest we met was 10 years old during our task force. There's an overrepresentation of Indigenous women and girls, and as I'll go through my presentation, there's an actual market for Indigenous women and girls, primarily Indigenous girls. Domestic victims are also, they're homeless youth, children in the child welfare system. Anywhere, really anywhere, that there is little or no adults around, that's where traffickers will go. We heard from women who were recruited from church, from the shopping mall, on the way to school, online. So it's anywhere where there's little or no adults around. That's where traffickers will situate themselves. And so children are very vulnerable, particularly children in the child welfare system, and particularly if you live in a province where your child welfare system taps out at 16, which is awful because there's little or no safety net for kids between 15 and 18 years of age, where almost nobody's watching, and traffickers are like, cha-ching, and that's exactly where they're going in recruiting girls. And so the other thing about who is being trafficked is that this is not getting any better, this is in fact getting worse. And so when I first started working on this issue 20 years ago, the average age of recruitment was 16. Today, it's 13 and getting younger. And so there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, and I think we can talk about that maybe during our discussion. But it is, our society is just getting worse and worse in how women and girls are being objectified, commodified, younger and younger and younger. And we have total control over that. It's again, supply and demand. We don't go to certain stores and we don't buy certain things to support businesses that do that. They're gonna have to make their money some other way. And then again, it's education of our girls. So, international as well, women and girls from other countries, that does happen. There is, Canada only just started 2 years ago keeping track of the legal adoptions in refugee camps. So now traffickers are just going there, adopting girls, bringing them back, and then trafficking them when they get here. And so the US has been doing that for a long time, keeping track of those adoptions and that crime there, and Canada has been working with them the last couple of years. So we'll start seeing more and more of those numbers and learning more and more about that dynamic. So I don't know much about that right now. And then who are the criminals? Supply and demand. There's the business side, and then there's the consumer side of any business that you have. So the business part, that is where the traffickers are. They're solely responsible for the recruitment, the luring, the control, all of that. And then there is the consumer side, which are primarily men who are buying women and girls for sex. And so that is who is involved in that. And so there are 3 stages to sex trafficking. There's the recruitment and luring, then there's the control, and then there's the escape, where it does end at some point in time, like for her. And those 3 stages are very organized, methodical, and targeted. There is, like I said, it's motivated by money and greed. And so it is very organized. In fact, you can buy a pimp manual on Amazon.com for $300 and learn how to do it yourself. And so there are, it is an industry, again, how people are profiting off learning how to victimize and harm women and girls. And again, it's most often targeted children and teens, mainly because, one, the demand wants children and teens, and children and teens are easier to recruit and lure. So they have a perfect environment for traffickers to flourish. So the recruitment and luring can happen a whole bunch of different ways. It just depends on the trafficker. There's kind of like not one way. You can have anywhere from a nice one that's really, positive and, is a romantic kind of trafficker and is buying her things and taking her places, and then you can have another one that's more manipulative. They call them gorillas when they're really mean. But there is a recruitment and luring that happens, and at some point the shoe drops, is what I call it, where now he wants something from you. Now you owe him the money for buying all your clothes, your drugs, your nails, your hair, etc. There is a part where the shoe drops and now the control kicks in. And that as well is done in a whole bunch of different ways, depending on the trafficker, whether they are getting them addicted to drugs or whether it is trauma bonding. And that's a really important thing for service providers to understand, is that trauma bonding is when that is the only way she knows how to survive. And so she justifies everything and may even care for him and fall in love with him and not want to disappoint him. And so, and that is the only way in which they can survive. So there is a real unique skill that outreach workers and women who are working on the front lines need to have a very special training to be able to get past that and work with women and girls on breaking apart that bond. But it does stop somehow. It does, like the trafficking does end at some point in time, usually around in their early 25-ish. They're actually no value to a trafficker anymore. Because one, they're too old, the man wants younger. And two, chances are that she's already addicted. Hey, oh my gosh, I gotta pay me. She's already addicted to drugs and alcohol, and that's taking a toll on her. And she is, and what people need to understand is that traffickers, because they're so motivated by money, 7 days a week, women, like survivors talk about 7 days a week, 10 to 15 times a day, the average 12, where they call them individual incidences of rape. And so they are, it doesn't matter even if you're on you're menstruating or you're on your moon time. There are 7 days a week. You have a daily quota that you must give the trafficker, and that can be anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a day, depending on where you are in Canada. And you must give that to the trafficker or else. And the or else could be something that is very violent or psychological, which are both just as bad. And so there is constant pressure on their bodies because we're not meant to do that. Like, our bodies are not meant. Gloria Steinem says it in a really straightforward way, that body invasion is worse than body assault. And so the invasion of women's bodies 10 to 15 times a day, 7 days a week, for years, really takes a toll on their bodies. So many women who have been trafficked, for the longer you have been trafficked and your body victimized, then the earlier you die. So then after all the stuff they've been through, many of them die young because of, again, the trauma done to their body. They end up with terminal illnesses as a result of their trafficking. So there are really but it does end for women. They either get kicked out, they walk out if they have an opportunity, and that's rare. They sadly commit suicide or go missing and murdered if it hasn't happened already, within that period of time. Or sometimes parents have paid an exit fee. And so during our task force, we met with two parents. One paid $10,000, another paid $150,000 to the trafficker to get their daughter back. And so there's an exit fee. So there is a way to make it end that is also very exploitive and awful.